Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Traumaplicity Talk Show with Dr. Amanda Helman. And I'm really excited to have my guest, Warren Young, here today. But first, Traumaplicity is trauma plus simplicity. And sometimes we think, okay, how does that go hand in hand? Because usually we think of trauma being complex, which, yes, we have complex processes, but our brain actually will respond when we hear simple, right? Simple steps in our healing process, which can take some time. And so the purpose of this show is to have different people on that will share their story, will share different tools that they use, and hopefully for you as the audience, whether you're starting your journey or in the middle of your journey or nearing the end, that you'll have some tools or hear some things from other people and it can help you. So without further ado, knowing that Traumaplicity, it's always on every Wednesday at 7 p.m. And really excited again to have you, Lauren. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And so we're going to just jump in, and I would like you to share part of your story related to trauma.
Okay. I can do this. So I was kind of thinking about what I thought would be meaningful to kind of share. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the ideas or the thoughts that came up to me was the idea of acceptance and belonging.
Mm-hmm.
So for whatever reason, this has been a conversation that has come up, I guess, with some frequency over the past little bit. And it's, just kind of had me reflecting and thinking about my life and just, things that I've seen, conversations that I've, been a part of, things that I just happen to know circumstantially.
Mm-hmm.
And I go back to being younger, right? I think about like high school days and elementary school days, and I think about um, like relationship groups. I think about friend groups. I think about, the different circles that folks moved in. And, I wasn't always, the popular guy. I wasn't the cool kid. Um, but I think that's also a part of kind of like the process of, finding who we are and just identifying ourselves, right? So I think about acceptance and belonging, right? And acceptance being welcomed into a group, and belonging being more of a feeling of fit in a group. And I remember, I guess one of the things that really stands out to me is thinking about how when I was younger, there were certain friend groups that I had. These were at the time, some of my closest friends. But then I
Mm-hmm.
thought about some of like the jokes and the teasing and just what that kind of dichotomy of, but these are close people, and they're teasing and making fun. And I realize that's something that is fairly common when you're growing up, when you're younger. But then I started thinking about how that can kind of play into who we are and how we identify, as we get older. So what really kind of came up for me was thinking about how we as adults, navigate acceptance and belonging, right? And this is not necessarily even in those friend groups only, right? It's also thinking about things like, intimate relationships, one-on-one relationships. And I just kind of started just really wondering what is it? How does that work? What do we do? And some of the things that I thought about were, for me anyway, was just, well, how as an adult now do I think about navigating, these things? How as an adult do I best manage my relationships? How do I make sure or do what I can do to ensure being accepted, or I guess conversely, feeling like I fit in different groups?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I can share some of my thoughts, and I don't know if you have any questions about that, but I can kind of just jump into some other thoughts that I had about that, if that's helpful.
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, and I just because I was hearing you. So,
Yeah.
just and you bring up really big things that I think even anyone in the audience can relate to, even though we don't feel like that. That belonging and acceptance is such a huge area, right? Across different things and how often we I think I don't know if these are your thoughts that you're going into because I don't know your thoughts per se, but just thinking like how much do we either respond certain ways to be accepted or belong and how that impacts different people, right? How we either internally or we don't respond or we do because we're not sure if people are going to welcome us, like you said, fitting in, and just the different things that we hear when we're younger. And that is a huge part of what shapes us as we get older. So thank you for
Right.
sharing that. And I just wanted
Yeah.
to acknowledge that and you can continue. Sure.
Well, thank you, thank you. And yeah, and I think that's you're kind of touching on a lot of some of my similar thoughts, right? And what I think about specifically is what do we do to be accepted, right?
Mm,
and and I think it's different and it's difficult because we know who we are, and we have ideas or thoughts about what another group or another person may want out of us, and sometimes those things don't align. So there's that disconnect between, well, am I doing the right thing? And there almost isn't any real validation, because a lot of times in relationships we don't always hear, hey, you're accepted, or hey, this is you have a place here. It's we just kind of move and just do the thing. So, if we're hanging out, maybe we just keep hanging out, but we don't ever talk about it. So it's almost like we have the assumption of, well, I guess we're still hanging out. So I guess we're still okay. I guess I'm still accepted, but we never know. Right. And I think that speaks to belonging, because then it's on me. Well, I think I belong. Maybe I belong. I don't know. I don't want to make it weird or awkward by asking if I belong. I mean, I think I belong, but I don't know. So I'm unsettled in how I do things. And I
mm,
think, unfortunately, we often have this kind of weird motion where we are trying to determine what is what, and we don't take the steps to really kind of figure it out by saying, hey, what is this? What are we doing here? Um,
mm,
so one of the things that I think of in navigating that is being communicative. I mean, this is one of the things that I really say often. It seems weird. It seems like it may feel uncomfortable sometimes, but the truth is, I'd like to know where I stand with you. So I'd like to check in. Is this thing working? Like, how is this a comfortable relationship? Am I holding up my end of things? Do you feel like I'm contributing? Right, and just checking in with the person or the people. Um, and I think from that, there can be this belonging, or this feeling of belonging, because the likelihood is, if we are moving in a certain way where folks are kind of allowing us to occupy the same space, with there's a sense of belonging. And I think what happens is, maybe we do or don't trust what we feel. So right, so there's this feeling of trust and intuition that we don't always give enough credence to um, really be our guiding force. So I guess kind of the two nuggets that I think of are communication and trust. Um,
mm.
it kind of trusting people to let you know what they need you to know, and communicating to find out things that are helpful for you to know.
I like it. So you talked a lot about communication
Hmm.
and checking in, and again, and also trust, like building that trust and communication, like for how we're doing, um, and I wonder, I guess I'm curious, Lauren, do you think that sometimes like depending on, and this is a whole other ball
Sure.
game, but
Yeah.
we'll maybe not go into this, but in terms of like attachment styles, sure, a little bit, but sometimes like being secure enough where like yes, sometimes like you're checking in, right? But like sometimes where because like we're so worried about belonging or fitting in, it could be where we're doing it a lot, right? I mean, I don't know if that makes sense versus like being secure and just knowing we're good, like things are good, and then there's communication. So I don't know if that was sort of also like what you were thinking, because I was hearing you like talking about communication, like depending on different relationships, but where are we like, but also the other part of it, right? The flip side, where there's like the secure attachment versus not.
And that's a great point. And I wasn't directly speaking about attachment styles, but I think that's important to consider, because we don't want to do too much, because or too little, because that in turn impacts how we feel about what we're doing, right? So attachment styles aside, I think I believe that there so in the absence of intuition, I think we can insert communication, right?
Mm,
So for the
mhm,
things that I don't feel confident that I know, I may be able to ask to check in to kind of figure out what is what. And on vice versa, where there's no communication, maybe I can use intuition. So I
mm,
think these two things kind of hold, they're the opposite sides of the same coin, leading to figuring out how to be comfortable in these relations, in these different groups, in these different pairings or joinings.
okay. No, that helps. Thank you for clearing that up. And yeah,
Sure.
I think communication and as you said, intuition, but just like that communication and having those conversations and um I think on all those different, depending on who's interacting, all matter. And so going into, I know you talked about like some of these stories of belonging or acceptance, and then looking at communication,
Mhm.
which it goes into, I think, nicely the next question, which is like, what are some simple steps that you've done to support maybe any of the healing, or just even how like you've become more empowered in your relationships, or over time, knowing like about belonging or acceptance, or that healing journey.
Yeah. And oddly, or I don't know if it's odd, but for me, what I found ended up being most important was the relationship that I had with myself.
Mm,
I had to make sure that I felt a sense of belonging with myself
mhm,
and that I accepted me.
mhm,
And that gave me this freedom, and that also empowered me to kind of do what I felt comfortable doing. And I recognize that that's not always easy. It's not something that you can buy in a store or that you can, find in your couch cushion. But
mhm,
but I think it's something that we all have in us. But we have to kind of get to that place where we start, caring about ourselves and depending on ourselves to support us and make some certain choices and make decisions that are going to benefit us. There was a quote that I saw said, "You have survived 100% of your worst days."
mm,
Right. And I think about that, and that reminds me of the fact that even when I wasn't feeling fantastic, I still was able to get
mm,
myself through it, whether it meant I was able to find it in me to bring myself out of it, or if I was able to, utilize resources available. But
mm,
I was able, I should know that if I am here, I can depend on myself to some extent to support me and get me through whatever it is I've gone through. So for me, going back to your question, I learned to trust myself and depend on myself, and that I could trust and depend on myself, and
mm,
that made me look at my other relationships differently,
mm,
because I don't know that I was as concerned in managing and maintaining that relationship as much as I was as making sure the relationships that I was a part of were beneficial to me and fed me and held me and supported me the way I needed to be supported.
mm,
So yeah, I guess my takeaway there is kind of putting myself first, making sure I remember that I am a priority and I have to always be my number one priority, because for anyone that maybe has disappointed me or upset me or has let me down, I have always been there to bring myself through it. If I can be here today to talk about it, clearly I've managed to get myself through the things. So I kind
mhm.
of look at it from that end of, making sure that I've taken care of the number one, which is me, and not even in a selfish way, but just
Yeah.
in a
Mhm.
concerned, self-respecting, self-loving way. And that's kind of helped me to kind of hold the position that I hold now.
Yeah, and I think that's helpful. So even in the audience, so that's putting yourself as a priority, right? Like taking care of you, making sure that you are accepting of yourself, and getting to know yourself is huge. And I don't, and I think it takes time, right? Depending on different people's stories to really know, like, who am I, right? Like,
Right.
do I enjoy spending time with myself, or enjoy me, really,
Yeah.
and also helping other people, like you said. But a lot of times I think it's so cliche, but it's essentially like any when we are, I always say this, so this is what I use. I don't know, you can probably all see this, but you can't really do anything if you're empty on your
Right.
own love or taking care of yourself. Then you're trying to take care of others, and it's kind of like, you're using a frying pan without any oil or any water, and it's just
Right.
burning.
Yep. Yep.
Not good. So I yeah, so instead of using the whole airplane thing, I tried to do a new one, Lauren.
Yeah.
But anyway, not to do cliche stuff. But anyway, but no, I love that you talked about taking care of yourself as a priority, and putting yourself first as a huge strategy.
Yeah.
Were there
And
other things? Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, no, and I think, yes, one thing I want to make sure to mention is that by no means am I suggesting that that's an easy
Mm-hmm.
relationship to form and to fortify, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
think it's important that people understand that the road to kind of getting to this place of self-love and self-acceptance is not a short road. It's not always going to be easy. It will come likely at the end of some, some bruises, some scarring, some tears, some discomfort. And that's part of it, because kind of through those things that you
Mhm.
recognize, well, I'm still here for me, right?
Mhm.
So through all of the things, remember there's one person that's with you all the time. And if you can kind of see that, it's not that you let yourself be put in a compromising position, or you let yourself get, mistreated or hurt by somebody else or when someone else's actions, but you were there to help yourself after this thing happened, right?
Mhm.
So honestly, a lot of this is about perspective shifting. um, I think we look at ourselves as often more evolved than we may be in a certain moment. We
Mhm.
all always hearing the I should be able to, or I should know better, or I should, right? And the reality is sometimes we are not where we, one, think we are, or two, would like to be. And it's just
Mhm.
kind of accepting that you may not be there yet, but you can get there and you will get there. And if you take the time to develop those relationships, you will get there. So first, I guess first things first is make sure you can form and fortify this relationship with yourself, and then recognize how significant it is and how supportive you are of you, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So it is. It does make sense that again, and I agree. Take really knowing and caring about yourself and learning how to love yourself. I feel like it takes time. Like we want to care and love for others, but there's different perspectives. But a lot of times, like, and I even realized that over years, like and that's this is a whole other talk. But I know we keep saying that, but really, like people think it's easy, like just love is real easy. It's not quite. It's actually
Right,
a deep thing to like learn how to get there. And I think that we make it seem very easy, but you can actually tell and in society even today, right, by people's actions or how they speak. And not that we're perfect. I know that I will constantly, till I take my last breath on earth, will be evolving in how I speak to people and not
right,
always being perfect. Like I want, right? Our intention is to take care of others, but basically that we see, like it's easier to say love, but when it's people that are hurting us, or like how do we still love people that may not agree with us
right,
or have different views, right, or that are doing things that are hurting a lot of people, or even a lot of people. And so that I think takes, like, how do we still love, right, how do we love people. And so anyway, it is like, but so like I say that to say, like, when it comes to yourself, right, we sometimes are our hardest critic, and
absolutely.
so learning how to unravel all the harsh words and everything else takes time, as you said, Warren, and also learning how to really care about yourself, right, and also like then learn how, because as you're loving yourself, then you can love others a lot differently because
Correct.
you're giving yourself more grace and less judgment for others
Hmm.
as well.
Absolutely.
I like it.
Absolutely.
And then any other tips or any other things that might have been helpful on your journey that you wanted to share?
um I guess there are always a number, numbers of things that, we can kind of go to the toolbox and grab. But I think an important thing to kind of consider is that we don't usually go through any of these journeys alone.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's like finding your tribe, finding your people, finding the folks that can actually hold you and support you, and that you realize you can depend on. And again, similarly to trusting yourself, it's not always going to be easy to trust others, because for those very same reasons of, being disappointed, being let down, of all of these things.
Yeah.
Um, but I think finding that group, and once you find them, hold on to them,
Mm-hmm.
and again, form and fortify, right? Make sure you find them, develop the relationships, and keep them strong, because they'll be the things that can help sustain you when you don't have anything left to give. You can often depend on your tribe to kind of give you that little bit to get you where you need to go. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's been a helpful one for me. As I've gotten older, I think I've become very, very aware of how important my tribe is.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks very different. It's full of a lot of different people from a lot of different walks of my life, but I
Mm-hmm.
know they're there, and it feels good when I can recognize that I don't have to do a thing by myself. I don't need to endure, something that may seem super challenging and super, uh, emotionally draining and difficult. I can say, hey, do you have a minute? Or hey, I really need you right now. Can you be there for me? And the likelihood is like, yeah, absolutely, here I am for you. And that's it adds for me, or it's added for me, and I think for others, this level of security, this feeling of safety and comfort, and that's like an encouragement to keep going. Right? It's almost like you're like a life, personal trainer to kind of like just push you to keep going. Like, you can do this. Oh, good job. It's just feeling like I can do this. Like, I do have a cheerleader. I have a support. I have someone that cares and wants me to succeed. So yeah, find your tribe.
I like it. So finding a tribe, right? Fortify those relationships,
Yep.
and also taking care of yourself, right? And also knowing that it takes time. So those are great tips, Lauren, again, for different people in the audience. And just as we're, coming through to the end of this talk, which I really enjoyed, just the way that you brought it from that acceptance and belonging, and then the journey and how that can look, and what are some simple steps, but again sometimes are more complex, but just starting those simple steps, right? Simply starting essentially.
Right.
um, but what's one quote or word of encouragement that you want to leave with the audience? Maybe they're starting this journey, they're in the middle of it, they're in this struggle to overcome to get to that place of acceptance and belonging.
One of the ones that has probably gotten me through a lot is trust the process.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, it's one that I remember. It's one that I share. When I think when you believe and when you connect to a thing, it could be to a relationship, it could be to an endeavor, it could be to an actual journey. Trust the process from where you start to the end. The likelihood is you'll have no clue what's going to come up. You don't know what lies ahead. You don't know what obstacles you may face. But I believe that is part of the journey, right? It's not just the destination. Part of the journey is the journey. Part of that experience is going through all of the things, because oftentimes we come out stronger, we come out smarter, we come out more seasoned, more um, just aware after we have these things to say, wow, I remember that thing that happened, and what I learned from that was, dot dot dot. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that kind of adds to who we are, and it kind of shapes and colors our lives, and just kind of helps inform future experiences. So yeah, trust the process. That's the one that I'll share.
Excellent. Well, trust the process. So, those of you that are listening or listen at any time on this Amanda Hellman author and speaker page, which is on Facebook, certainly, and also this will be on different media later, but certainly I think that's a good one, right? Trusting the process, to know that, Warren, as you said, that it is a process at times, but you're going to be okay. It may not feel okay now, but there are
Right.
times and you're going to grow, and you're going to be you're going to evolve. So thank you so much, Warren, for
You're very
being here
welcome.
today. I appreciate
Thank you
our
for having
talk.
me.
Loved it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And so for those in the audience, know that we have Traumaplicity talk show. It's always every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Catch us live or catch us recorded, which actually this week's a recording. And we're really excited to see you all. And if you have any questions for Warren that you put on the page, I will make sure I ask him. And who knows, perhaps we'll come back to be able to answer them, or maybe there's another topic. So, everybody, have a great week. Know that you are loved, you're valued, and you matter. And that, I think, as Warren mentioned, like that acceptance and belonging starts with yourself. So, make sure you take some time for you. All right, with that, take care, everybody, and thank you again, Warren. Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you. Take care. Bye, everyone.